All right, so welcome to the Dual-Sensory Impairment Rule 6A-6.03022 F.A.C 2025 Revision and Updates webinar. We have, so myself here with the Florida Instructional Material Center for the Visually Impaired, I am Liz Anderson. We have some other FIMC staff as well as folks from the Resource Materials and Technology Center for the Deaf Hard of Hearing. I think we can all kind of introduce ourselves as we get to our portions of the webinar, but let's go ahead and do some housekeeping. So we have an interpreter here with us today. We do have auto-generated captions available as well in your Zoom menu bar if you turn on the show caption button. We are using the chat. I see some of you are in there right now. Go ahead and make sure, oh, you know what? I think Zoom changed their settings and now it defaults to everyone. Great. So you can type your questions and things like that in the chat as we go through, or of course, this is a meeting and you have the ability to speak and ask questions. But we do ask that you remain muted, and if you would like to ask the question with your microphone or with the camera, to use the hand raise feature so we can spotlight you and then let you ask your question. And we'll have some natural breaks throughout where we can get to those questions as well. So our agenda for today, we'll do our welcome and introductions as we get through. We're going to start off with Gwen Black. I'll let her introduce herself at her portion. We at FIMC will share some resources that we have related to deafblindness. RMTC-DHH will share their information, and we will wrap up by 3:30 today. And I am going to put in the chat, we are giving credit for this. So I'm going to put an opening code in the chat for you to take note of for at the end of the session. And I'm also going to put the link to the handout in the chat so you have access to that. The recording for this is going to be posted on the past events page of the FIMC-VI website by the end of the week. We'll aim for that. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next slide and turn it over to Gwen Black.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, I am Gwen Black. I am the Florida Department of Education, Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services, State Lead for Deaf Hard of Hearing, Visual Impairment, Dual Sensory Impairment. Today, I'll be providing an overview of the changes to the DSI rule. The rule was written to be similar in structure and outlined to align with DHH and VI rules amended last year of May 2024. I'll begin with an overview of the Florida Department of Education mission, vision, and goals. It's appropriate to begin with the underlying thought that students with disabilities are students first. It is our aim to increase the proficiency of all students through one seamless system, including students with disabilities. Florida Department's Education mission and vision. The mission of Florida's Early Learning 20 education system shall be to increase the proficiency of all students within one seamless, efficient system by allowing them the opportunity to expand their knowledge and skills through learning opportunities and research valued by students, parents, and communities. Florida will have an efficient, world-class education system that engages and prepares all students to be globally competitive for college and careers. Our goals are achievement, progression, readiness, and access for all students. Highest student achievement, seamless articulation and maximum access, skilled workforce and economic development, and quality, efficient services. FDOE's emphasis on education of students with disabilities can be seen in other sections of the Florida statutes, such as Section 39.0016 Florida statutes, which relates to healthcare and reads, improving educational results for children with disabilities is an essential element of our public policy of ensuring quality, equality of opportunity, full participation, independent living, and economic self-sufficiency for individuals with disabilities. Florida understands the impact of quality, seamless, efficient education system that prioritizes students with disabilities can be far-reaching. The rule being updated is Rule 6A-6.03022 of the Florida Administrative Code, Exceptional Student Education Eligibility and Assessments for Students who have Dual-Sensory Impairment. The rule title shown here is the amended rule title. Today, we will be reviewing each section of this rule. The purpose of this overview is to provide school administrators, educational staff, family members, and other decision makers with a set of guidelines and technical assistance to evaluate the quality of local educational agency, the LEA, programs for students who have a dual sensory impairment, to share the updated changes of this rule. A child with a disability. State eligibility guidelines and definitions under Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act define a child with a disability as one who meets specific criteria and needs special education and related services. Before exiting a child from special education, a full and individual evaluation must be conducted to assess all areas related to the suspected disability. As a result, the rule was updated and the changes are reflected in this presentation. Generally, each rule contains the following components: definitions, full and individual evaluation, eligibility assessments and determinations, assessment waiver, eligibility determined, reevaluations, and supportive services. The rule now contains a definitions section. On this slide is a comparison of the definitions for DSI from IDEA and the current rule 6A-6.03022, Florida Administrative Code. I'm only going to read our rule. Dual sensory impairment is defined as the presence of both hearing loss and a visual impairment, or an etiology or a medical diagnosis that indicates a potential dual sensory loss, the combination of which adversely affects the student's educational performance. The term includes congenital deafblindness, congenital visual impairment with acquired hearing loss, congenital hearing loss with acquired visual impairment, and acquired hearing loss and visual impairment, including blindness, as defined in Rules 6A-6.03013, parentheses 1A and B, and 6A-6.03014, parentheses 1A. If a student is found eligible for both deaf or hard of hearing and visual impairments as primary or other exceptionalities, then the student must be made eligible for dual sensory impairment. In addition to clarifying the definition of DSI, the rule now also defines the professionals responsible in the evaluation and assessment process. Teachers of the DSI professional roles are teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing and teacher of the visually impaired. Other specialized roles have been added as an intervener or educational interpreter, play key roles here. The next subsection of the rule requires a full and individual evaluation to be conducted by the LEAs. Full and individual evaluation under IDEA requires the LEA to fully evaluate children in all areas of suspected disability. This means using a variety of assessment tools and strategies to gather relevant, functional, developmental, and academic information about the child, including information provided by the parent. using technical sound instruments that may assess the relative contribution of cognitive and behavioral factors in addition to physical or developmental factors, and providing and administering the assessment in the child's native language or other mode of communication and in the form most likely to yield accurate information. A full and individual evaluation is required in rule. It states a full and individual evaluation must be conducted by a school district to identify a student with dual sensory impairment as eligible for exceptional student education and consider the individual needs of a student with dual sensory impairment when developing, reviewing, or revising an individual educational plan in accordance with the following rules. 6A-1.09401 parentheses 1K, 6A-1.09414, 6A-6.03028, 6A-6.0331, and 6A-6.0344. At the end of this presentation, I'll review and reference what each one of those rules are. The rule also contains a section regarding the evaluation and eligibility components. Eligibility determination and educational need. The eligibility and IEP team must consider information from a variety of sources. No single source determines eligibility. The initial evaluation must be conducted within 60 days of receiving parental consent for the evaluation under Title 34 and Rule 6A-6.0331. The eligibility and IEP team must be provided a range of information gathered from a variety of sources. Eligibility determination for students who are DSI. For a student who has or who is suspected of having a combination of a hearing loss and a visual impairment, or a medical diagnosis that indicates a potential dual sensory loss, the evaluation for eligibility must be conducted as described in Rules 6A-6.03013 parentheses 3. That's by the way, the DHH rule, and 6A-6.03014 parentheses 3. That's the VI rule, unless one or more of the assessments is waived as provided in paragraph 3C. Deaf or hard of hearing evaluation. An evaluation for eligibility must include an audiological report, a functional listening assessment, and a communication and language assessment as described in Rule 6A-6.03013 parentheses 3B through C. Visual impairment evaluation. An evaluation for eligibility must include a medical report, a functional vision assessment, a learning media assessment, and an orientation and mobility screening as described in Rule 6A-6.0314 parentheses 3B through D. Please refer to the DHH and VI rules for more guidance. The next subsection is about assessment waiver. Assessment waiver introduced. If one of the assessments described in paragraphs 3A and B provides sufficient information to determine a student who has a dual sensory impairment is eligible for exceptional student education, the other assessments will be waived for the purpose of determining eligibility. However, the assessments that were waived must be conducted during the IEP developmental process. An eligibility assessment waiver is a process that allows the postponement of some of the required assessments to ensure that eligibility is not delayed for students who meet the eligibility requirements. Assessment waiver explained. If a child is found to be a child with a disability, as defined in IDEA, the student is eligible by the assessments described under eligibility determination for special education and related services. Once a student is found eligible within the 60-day evaluation timeline, any waived assessment, in addition to the special skills assessment, must be conducted prior to the IEP team meeting. Once a student is determined eligible is another subsection of the rule, which we will review now. Once a student with dual sensory impairment is determined eligible for exceptional student education, the district must conduct the following assessments. A, any assessment waived for the eligibility determination as provided in paragraphs 3C, and B, a special skills assessment that evaluates skills aligned with content knowledge as described in Rule 6A-1.09401, parentheses 1K. This assessment must be conducted by a teacher of the deaf or hard of hearing and a teacher of the visually impaired, and may include a range of team members to include an intervener, an interpreter, and other related service providers to evaluate the special skills areas for both the hearing loss and the visual impairment. Updating DSI eligibility. So once a student has been determined eligible under both deaf or hard of hearing and visual impairments, the eligibility category must be updated to reflect dual sensory impairment. The student is then required to receive support and services from both the teacher of the deaf or hard of hearing and the teacher of the visually impaired for identified needs. This reclassification ensures that student receives appropriate supports and services tailored to their combined sensory needs. Annual census is another subsection of the rule, which we'll review now. A DSI child count. The school districts are required to include students with dual sensory impairment in the state's annual census report for the national child count of children and youth. These students must be registered with the American Printing House for the Blind by the appropriate ex officio trustee. Parental consent is required for registration with APH. These students must also be registered and included in the National Deafblind Census Registry. Reevaluation is another subsection of the rule, which we'll review now. Reevaluation for DSI. Reevaluation of students with dual sensory impairment must comply with Rule 6A-6.03022, parentheses 7, and must include an audiological report and evaluation of all skills described in paragraphs 3A and 4A and B, known to be impacted by the hearing loss and as required for determining specially designed instruction. The audiological report may be waived by the IEP team, including a teacher of the deaf or hard of hearing or audiologist, or both if the team agrees that there is no suspected change in hearing loss. In making the determination that an audiological report may be waived, an audiologist or a TOD should be included as part of the IEP team making that determination. B, a medical report and evaluation of skills described in paragraphs 3B and 4A and B, known to be impacted by visual impairment as required for determining specially designed instruction. The medical report may be waived by the IEP team, including the teacher of the visually impaired. If 1, the team agrees that there is no suspected change in visual functioning, or 2, the team is provided a physician's written recommendation to waive the medical report for students with bilateral anophthalmia. Again, in making the determination that a medical report may be waived, a TS teacher of the visually impaired, should be included as part of the IEP team in making that determination. Supportive services. The final section of the rule is supportive services. A list of Florida Department of Education supportive student services and resources are provided in each rule. Referral forms, links, and technical support contacts for services must be provided to students and parents at the IEPT meeting. Refer to the FDOE DSI web pages for links to these resources. And here's the list of the FDOE supportive student services and resources for DSI. We're going to start with auditory oral, Clark School, and bridge to speech, Clark School. Auditory oral, University of Miami, Debbie School, and bridge to speech, Debbie School. Critical initiatives in visual impairment, Project Florida State University. Educational Interpreter Project. Florida Division of Blind Services. Florida Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. Florida Instructional Materials Center for the Visually Impaired. Florida Low Vision Initiative. Florida School for the Deaf and Blind. And Resource Materials and Technology Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. So these are the rules in reference from earlier. So Rule 6A-109-401 parentheses 1K, Student Performance Standards, Special Skills. This includes student performance standard documents for general state academic standards and alternate academic achievement standards for all subjects, including the special skills standards. Rule 6A-1.09-414, Course Requirements, Grades PK through 12, Exceptional Student Education. This course description, by providing the essential content and course requirements for each course in grades PK through 12 contained in the course code directory and instructional personnel assignments. Rule 6A-6.03022, Provision of Free Appropriate Public Education and Development of Individual Educational Plans for Students with Disabilities. This includes procedures and requirements for all students with disabilities aged 3 through 21 in the state who have the right to a free, appropriate public education and the development of IEPs. Rule 6A-0331, General Education Intervention Procedures, Evaluation, Determination of Eligibility, Reevaluation and the provision of exceptional student educational services. This includes all procedures and requirements for LEAs to provide FAPE for all students with disabilities. And Rule 6A-6.03411, Definitions, ESE policies and procedures, and ESE administrators. This includes the definitions and procedures regarding education of exceptional students. Questions? Or not?
We do have some questions. I think Sherry was sort of rounding those up.
Yes, I was managing spotlights. Just one second. Thank you. So the first question we had was referencing the section 5 that reads, once a student's been determined eligible under both DHH and visual impairments, eligibility category has to be updated to reflect dual sensory. The student is then required to receive support services from both the teacher of the deaf or hard of hearing and the teacher of the visually impaired for identified needs. And the question from Dr. Izzo is, can you define what that means?
Can I define what that means?
Yes.
So let's say you have a child. We'll get you. Are you looking for it?
Yeah, I was trying to. Yes, this is the slide, right? Yes.
There's two of them. There's two parts that actually say this, but I think it says it in definition as well as here. from what I remember. Since
Yeah, I
So
think
if
this is what triggered Erin's question.
Okay,
Yeah.
the student required to support service. So if let's say a child has, and I hope I'm hearing the question correctly, but if a child has either a DHH eligibility or a VI eligibility, and they're found, or there is a question that they may have the other loss as well. And so if they have DHH and they start that full and individual evaluation for visual impairments, and they find that that child is eligible, and they go through that visual, they go through the IEP process. Once that process goes through, then that child is then, that's when you change the code, the eligibility code. No, that's not what you're asking. I'm sorry.
No, I think he's asking, what does support services from both the teacher of the deaf or hard of hearing and the teacher of the visually impaired for identified needs? So
Oh, okay. I understand now. Okay. So basically, the IEP will dictate what those needs are depending on the type of degree, I guess, of hearing loss or visual impairment. So you might have, our kids look very different. So that child may be blind with maybe a mild to moderate hearing loss. What are the needs and support services that the teacher of the deaf and the teacher of the visual impaired will be assigned based on that IEP? What are those services? What are the goals that they'll be working on? What are,
he clarifies in the chat. So does that not automatically mean they get vision and DHH specially designed instruction?
say that one more time? Because I don't have my chat open.
So he asks, does it automatically mean, or he wants to know if he can just, yeah, Erin.
Yes, talk. Sorry.
Yes. Erin, I can't find you. There you are. I'm going to pin you or add the spotlight for you. There we go.
Hello.
Hello.
I don't know what's happening with my camera. Hang on. I found it. Okay. Ooh. So when I was presented this rule change by a wonderful, kind-hearted, discretionary project representative, there was someone in the crowd, not me, that just needed some clarification about what that bottom part meant. So how it was presented / how I interpreted it is this, because I'm looking from the scope of a lot of the friends we have that we've evaluated. Typically, there's a lot of medical stuff going on that has a propensity for a visual impairment as well as a deaf and hard of hearing impairment. So we're not going to look at individual, like let's do DHH first and vision. We're going to probably do DSI because just depending on the case and the friend. So in some of these situations, though, we really do look at the manifestation of the various sensory impairments. We look at the medical, we look at the evaluations that we're doing. From what I received from this very kind-hearted lady was that if we find a child eligible for DSI as the eligibility, that means automatically they would need DHH, like a DHH and a vision service line. That could be consults or that could be direct minutes. And so my reservation, hesitation, palpitation for this is looking at, that sounds to me a little predeterminative, because I could see, depending on what is manifesting, like if it's more of a visual, and I'm not talking about a specific kid, but if it's more manifesting as a visual disability but they have normal hearing at this point, and it could lead to down the road, a hearing loss, but that hearing loss might impact them at the age 35. That might not tag SDI, specially designed instruction, for a DHH teacher just yet. Now, as they age with us, as they grow older, as we love them more, their needs may change. And so
Mhm.
that might lead to then that as a direct service. But I just want to get clarification that DSI does not equal all of these service lines on an IEP. So we could possibly have like vision and DHH, just vision, just DHH. We could check my favorite box on an IEP of like training and support staff for school personnel, saying that at any time and any way they can call whatever sensory impaired person to come in and support this kid or to provide additional training, depending on the loss or the whatever, to do that. I just want for my own sanity and peace of mind and understanding, because if we have to go in way, fine. Just know you know, I'm still me.
And this is post IEP, correct?
This would we have found the student eligible for DSI. Check
And
plus. Now we are
okay.
going into amending of the IEP.
Okay, so you're
Or
going into full and
drafting.
individual, you're doing the amendment, you're doing whatever it takes to make sure that the correct services are services, accommodations, all the
Based
players
on
are
the
in play.
evaluations and all of the stuff we've done.
Okay, so it's based on that collective data, on everything that you find in those evaluations, what those needs are for that child at that time. Now, you specifically mentioned a VI and possibly later on down the road that you've identified that this student through possibly, that is going to probably lose his hearing, correct? Whatever that
Potentially. Yeah.
potentially. So depending on what that looks like, just make sure that those services are in play. For example, will that child need ASL or, later on down the road, you want to start building whatever those needs may be once that hearing loss is completely gone, correct? So again, it's the collective, collect your data. You understand what that picture looks like going into that IEP team, and it's collaborative, meaning what does that look like? What are those services? What do those minutes look like? So yes, you are
Okay.
correct. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Let me just unspotlight Dr. Izzo. And then there's another question in the chat that asks, is the supportive services list available in other languages?
Not at the moment. If you basically what those lists, let's say if you go onto our DSI page and you click on that resource page, it will take you to that website, to RMTC or to the division to the VR, division of vocational rehab, whatever, and they may have something in those languages that you may be looking for. Okay.
Let's see. Candace just threw the DSI page up in the chat.
Should we open it for a second? Is that possible? Do we have time or no?
I think so. Yeah. Let me just stop sharing and reshare.
Thanks, Liz.
You're welcome.
So when you go on the Florida Department of Education ESE eligibility dual sensory impairment page, and it also looks very similar if you go to deaf and hard of hearing and also visual impairment, which are also listed, in those different areas, and I think visual impairments. But it's got, if you want to reach out to me, all you have to do is, I'm the lead contact. You could send me a question or say, can we talk? And I will call you as soon as possible. And most people who have reached out know that I usually call immediately. Because I know that time is of an essence on trying to understand something around rule. There's the actual rule, and then and we've got Florida Department of Education resources. So I mentioned in rule is all of the Florida Department of Education resources. What is in Spanish under Florida Department of Education is the Florida Educational Opportunities for Student with Sensory Impairments. And I'm sure that both RMTC and FIMC have gone through and send this document out to everyone for resources. But this is a great resource to give to parents because it basically goes through what that looks like for that child with a sensory impairment and all of the resources available outside of what we've listed. Here's the front of it. And here's the overview of the context. So it goes through the eligibility, who's eligible, services are available, and all of the resources. And there's also federal and state regulations towards the end. If you just scroll down a little bit, you'll see it's got the division. So for example, it's got all of their contact information, a little blurb on what that looks like, and any additional information that we felt from that resource was important. Okay. So if you go back to, yeah.
Go back to the slide deck.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, I was hoping we would share that, so I'm glad you brought that up, Gwen.
Okay. Yay.
Yeah.
Really
Worked out perfectly.
Exactly.
All right. I think I'm sharing the slides again. Did that work?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. So there is another question in the chat from Nada El Khoury. She's asking, what do I do to write an IEP without that information? And does the TOD, and the TOD does the informal language eval, and that's in reference to language and communication that the SLP is not evaluating until the student has hearing aids.
Nana, can you jump on and tell me what you're asking? Like Aaron did. Do you mind? Maybe not.
Nada, I'm going to spotlight you, or you've been spotlit. So now you can unmute and ask your question, get for clarification.
Hi,
Hi, Nana.
I'm having problems convincing the SLP that they can do a communication and a language eval without hearing aids because it does not matter. I don't know how do I get them to do it, convince the ESC director. I forwarded the email you shared with me, but I'm still having that problem.
Since this was something you've brought out with me, do you mind us having a discussion tomorrow?
Oh, sure, but because it's gonna be the same thing for DSI if the SLP refuses to do the same thing for a DSI student.
So then do we need the SLP to do the communication? They're only there as an option. It's either the TOD.
Okay,
You don't really need the SLP.
for DSI
Mm-mm.
to meet the DHH eligibility.
If the TOD can fulfill and conduct all three of those evaluations, in rule for DHH, they were just listed as an alternative in case the TOD was not available to do the communication and language.
You mean unless the SLP is not available?
Yes.
Okay.
What did I say?
Clear.
Sorry.
You said TOD. That's all right. Thank you so much. Appreciate your answer.
Okay.
I don't see any other questions in the chat box. Unless somebody else wants to raise their hand, and we can spotlight if anyone has any questions.
All right. Well, I don't see anyone else. But if you think of questions later for Gwen, you have our contact information here. And Gwen, I don't know if you want to go ahead and type your phone and email in the chat as well for easy reference.
Okay.
But thank you, Gwen, for, oh, wait, Erin has another one. Spoke too soon.
Of course, Erin does. Should I be
This
paying
is your
attention?
chance.
I do not see Aaron's camera on, so I can't. There he is. Found him.
I'm back.
Gotcha. There you
So
go.
this one's for FIMC-VI, so RMTC, take a seat. So I just have a question / a need, and I've kind of already called Gwen about this case one time, but it's our binocular vision friends that also may have a hearing loss. And we're just getting bombarded with explaining educational relevance and vision therapy and all of the things. And Gwen very kindly helped and assisted us kind of problem solving through that. But if there could be any kind of clarification or support or like, you know, other documentation just kind of explaining about this, because it's, I mean, again, it's, we have a new practice in town and he just gives it away like candy. And it's really, it's kind of, it's degrading to the vision team at some point because it's, we just feel like we're fighting this uphill battle with very limited knowledge or from other parties that are being told like they have a vision disability and they also have a hearing loss, so that means they're DSI automatically. I'm like, pause. We have to kind of look into a full comprehensive evaluation, and we do observations, and we talk about 504s, and we try to, you know, massage and help corral. But if, you know, if there could be any kind of further support, literature, effigy, something, I would truly appreciate it.
Yeah, the challenge is that yeah, so we've got those students like the ones with convergence insufficiency and things like that, where we still have to do that full evaluation, right? To determine, because there could be other things going on with that child, but that doesn't mean that, just like anything, there's just not an automatic eligibility. But yeah, maybe if you want to reach out to us, Erin, you know, like after break, and we can talk some more and see if there's any kind of like, because I do think some of it is just the understanding of what a TBI does, you know,
Yeah. Pretty strong group, but it's again, it's just we've had this like rise and uptick of this, and it's again, it's a lot of times it's like one team confused convergence insufficiency with something else, and like we're like, so pause, you have the wrong thing. Like you're not even like this kid is not this at all. The letters are similar, but we're not going to go down that path at all. So it's I just don't know how to make it clearer for like people that don't have masters in vision or have just immersed themselves in it.
I will say sometimes I think it's been helpful, like if that medical professional is maybe they're saying things that seem to recommend vision services, helping them understand. But yeah, we can touch base after.
Okay, absolutely.
Break. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Oh, Andrea hopefully put a position paper in the chat about the role and training of teachers of students with visual impairment. So, and why we do not provide vision therapy services. So there you go. Thank you, Andrea. All right. So we have about 15 minutes left. So thank you, Gwen, for that overview, for answering the questions. We appreciate you.
You're welcome.
So we are going to just share some resources now from us projects. As I said earlier, I am Liz Anderson. I am the project director with the Florida Instructional Materials Center for the Visually Impaired. Tiffany Conrad is our coordinator. She couldn't be with us here today, but I really hope that if you're here and you're serving DSI students, that you are on our mailing list. If you are not receiving newsletters and other kind of communication from us, please do sign up for that. The link is on this slide or it's on the forms page of our website to sign up for our some more communication that we have. And the best place to find all the services that we provide is on our website, FIMC-VI.org. And we also put all of our recorded trainings on a YouTube channel. So if you want to what are those things people say? Subscribe, follow, like, whatever, our YouTube channel, so you can see all of those as they come out, and this recording will go on there as well. So some information that we have available for you all. So as Gwen just reviewed, for each student that is being considered for dual sensory eligibility, we're going to use those same essential assessments for each of those categories, right? So for visual impairment and for DHH. So for visual impairment, we're looking at medical documentation, functional vision assessment, learning media, orientation ability, special skills assessment. We have, and it's linked at the top of the slide, we have a page on our website, Eligibility and Assessment. I'm not going to go to it for the sake of time, but that page has different resources that we created specific to the VI rule, but that all applies to DSI as well. There's a document on obtaining the medical report that you're required to have. There's the supportive services document. There's a link to the rule for VI in there. We did write a technical assistance paper specific to the VI rule that should be helpful for the DSI rule as well. And then, so those are the things at the top of this eligibility and assessment page. And then toward the bottom, you're going to see different resources. Some of them we have in our loan library. Some of these are things that you can buy from vendors, or they're free resources out on the internet, but that can be used to complete the various required assessments for eligibility. So two that we wanted to highlight specifically here, actually a few that we have. So from the Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, they have a essential tools of the trade. You'll see the picture in the top right of the slide for students who are deafblind. So this is something that you could borrow from us and check it out and then go buy it through your district. But this would be a good resource for TSDIs, for TODs, orientation mobility specialists that are doing all of the evaluations for DSI. It includes a functional tactile bodily evaluation, a functional vision evaluation, communication evaluation, all kinds of good things in there. The second to last link on this slide is the basic skills and fuse skills assessment. So this is also from the Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and it's basically an ECC assessment for more complex learners. Is based on the observed skill, and it has rating skills that allows you to break down a task so students can show performance and growth. And then the last link is sensing and learning. If you're familiar with the sensory learning kit, this is the new updated version of that for students that are at the sensory motor stage of learning. So another great resource that is an American Printing House for the Blind product. And they also created a related training on the APH Hive, thanks to those things there. Sensing and learning is free from us if your student is registered with us. We have some self-paced Canvas courses that are for practitioners or anyone who is working with students who are deafblind or dual sensory impaired who want to improve their knowledge. The content of these three courses was created by the National Center on Deafblindness. We at FIMC collaborate with the Florida and Virgin Islands Deafblind Collaborative to facilitate these courses. You can earn in-service credit. And there are 3 right now, and these are every year we, as the National Center on Deafblindness creates a new course, I think there's going to be one more in this series. We add it and we just repeat each of these every year. And you can sign up with the link that is on the slide, or we also have on the forms page of our website a Canvas course sign-up form. And we also wanted to share information from the Florida and Virgin Islands Deafblind Collaborative. Bobby, I think Michelle Pearson is on here if she wants to put her information in the chat. But Bobby is responsible for reporting data on deafblind children and young adults in Florida to the federal government. And this is an annual report. Each LEA should be doing this. This is the annual National Deafblind Child Count or census. This is separate from the annual census that FIMC-VI does for students that are visually impaired. So make sure you're participating in this too. Bobby also has resources for interveners or those who provide direct support to students through their open hands, open access intervener learning modules. You can contact Shelley Volker for information about that. And they also have links on their site to other information, resources, connections, including the Helen Keller National Center for Deafblind Youth and Adults and the National Center on Deafblindness. So we hope you're using Bobby as a resource as well. And that is all I'm going to share. So I'm going to keep sharing the slides, but I'm going to turn it over to RMTC-DHH.
Hi, everybody. This is Sherry Conrad, and I'm one of the Deaf Education and Training Specialists with RMTC-DHH. I'm excited to be here today. Thank you so much, Liz, for this opportunity to collaborate with FIMC on this really important topic. Next slide, please. So one of the things we want to make sure that everyone leaves with today is the opportunity to book a time with any of our RMTC DHH specialists. And you can do that from our About Us, Contact Us webpage. And so you can, if you click on Deaf Education and Training Specialists, that'll bring up all of our specialists. So if you want to talk to myself or Candace or Sarah, you can choose a time on one of our calendars. But if you're in a hurry and you need some help immediately, you can also select the next available specialist, and your request will get put on the on our calendar at the next availability. We also have an assessments tool page, and that assessments tool page has information about the assessment rule related to deaf, hard of hearing, but it also has lists of assessments that can be conducted for each one of the categories, including the functional listening assessment, the communication and language assessments in both spoken language and sign language, American Sign Language, as well as some information on the special skills assessment, which is really loosely tied or explicitly tied to the expanded skills standards. There's also a really great timeline graphic for you to use for helping to determine when and how all of those assessments play into each other. Next slide, please. And it's really important when we start talking about those services and supports provided to students who are dual sensory impaired that we focus in on what specially designed instruction looks like. And that could mean evidence-based literacy specially designed instruction for students who are deaf and hard of hearing. So those are those literacy approaches that are designed specifically to meet the unique needs of kids who are deaf and hard of hearing. And that also, the specially designed instruction also points to those Florida standards addressing specially designed instruction, which include expanded skills standards and as well as speech and auditory training standards. And you can scan the QR code for more information on specially designed instruction, or the QR code underneath the document will take you to those evidence-based literacy specially designed instruction resources. And finally, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the Usher syndrome screening, which is in the B's portal to professional learning activities. These are free online modules, and this one is worth a suggested 5 points, and it includes information on Usher syndrome, those hearing and vision losses associated with the syndrome, the audiogram review, the paper screening, the on-site screening, and then evaluating the results and what do you do with that. Oh, well then, hey, look, if there's anything that you guys need from us, feel free to use those bookable calendars if you want to talk more about your kids who are deaf and hard of hearing. And again, thank you so much to Gwen and to Liz for this opportunity to hang out and get some information out to our friends.
Thank you, Sherry. We are always happy to hang out with you guys and learn together and all the fun things. Michelle Pearson, I see, did put something in the chat that, oh yeah, so for Bobby, the Deafblind project, that if a child is on their census, Bobby can help get the child free distant communication equipment. For example, iPads, laptops, professional braille displays, light up keyboards, all kinds of things. So that is a wonderful thing to take advantage of. And I see there were lots of links in the chat that were shared. I didn't see any other questions. Did I miss any? I don't think so. Okay. All right, so we are on the evaluation slide here. I have the QR code on the page, but we do appreciate your feedback. This will be shared with RMTC as well, so they can see the feedback on the presentation. We want to make sure that we're meeting all of your needs. And so I did just put that in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and advance the slide here because we're coming up on the end of our time. So we are also offering in-service credit. I do hope that this was added to the form. I'll double check. But the form is in the chat as well. And the closing code for the certificate for you to receive when you fill out the form is blind. Closing code is blind. And that is it. That is everything that we had to share with you all today. I think somebody put the handout in the chat, but I'm gonna do that one more time. I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording.